Imagine London, the bustling heart of an empire, reduced to ash and rubble. Flames lick the sky, screams echo through the streets, and a thick black smoke chokes the air. This isn't a scene from a disaster movie. This was the terrifying reality in 60 AD, orchestrated not by a foreign army, but by a woman fueled by grief and a thirst for vengeance. This is the story of Boudicca, the warrior queen of the Iceni. But who was she, and what could drive a queen to unleash such devastation upon the most powerful empire the world had ever known? To understand her rage, we have to go back to a time before the smoke and the fire, to a betrayal that would ignite a rebellion. Boudicca was the wife of Prasutagus, king of the Iceni, a Celtic tribe in what is now East Anglia, England. For years, Prasutagus had maintained a fragile peace with the occupying Roman forces. He was a client king, ruling his people but ultimately under Rome's thumb, hoping to secure his kingdom and his family's future after his death. He made a will. In it, he named the Roman emperor as co-heir, alongside his two daughters. He thought this clever act of diplomacy would protect his family and his people, ensuring a smooth transition of power and preserving some of their independence. He couldn't have been more wrong. Upon Prasutagus's death, the Romans saw not an agreement, but an opportunity. They ignored the will completely. They declared the Iceni kingdom annexed, their lands forfeit, and their wealth the property of Rome. Roman officials and soldiers descended like vultures. They seized the property of Iceni noblemen, treating them as slaves. When Boudicca protested, standing up for her rights and the rights of her people, the local Roman procurator decided to make a brutal example of her. The humiliation was unimaginable, in a public and horrifying display of dominance. Roman soldiers seized Queen Boudicca and flogged her, a punishment reserved for the lowest of subjects. As if that wasn't monstrous enough, they subjected her young daughters to unspeakable violence. In one single, barbaric act, Rome had not just stolen her kingdom, they had shattered her family, her dignity, and her spirit. They had intended to break her, to show the Iceni the futility of resistance. But they had made a catastrophic miscalculation. They hadn't broken Boudicca, they had forged her into a weapon. The news of this outrage spread like wildfire. The Iceni were seething. Their grief and anger found a focal point in their desecrated queen. Boudicca, with the scars on her back and a fire in her eyes, rose to address her people. The Roman historian Cassius Dio described her as tall, terrifying in appearance, with a piercing gaze and a harsh voice. A great mass of bright red hair fell to her hips. She wore a golden torque, a multicolored tunic, and a thick cloak fastened with a brooch. Holding a spear, she rallied the tribes. Her words were pure fury. She spoke of the loss of their freedom, the taxes that bled them dry, and the arrogance of their occupiers. She spoke of her own humiliation, a symbol of the humiliation of their entire nation. She wasn't just a queen seeking justice anymore. She was a mother avenging her children, a warrior leading her people to either victory or death, and the tribes of Britain listened. The neighbouring Trinovantes, who had their own grievances with the Romans, were the first to join her. Soon a vast rebel army, said to be over 100,000 strong, had gathered around their warrior queen. A storm was brewing, and its first target was the symbol of Roman oppression, the city of Camulodunum, modern-day Colchester. Camulodunum was a colony for retired Roman soldiers, a place where the invaders lived in luxury on lands stolen from the locals. The city was unprepared, largely undefended. Boudicca's army fell upon it with unstoppable fury. They showed no mercy. The city was sacked and burned to the ground. The great temple of Claudius, a monument to the emperor who had conquered them, became the last refuge for the Roman defenders. They held out for 2 days before the rebels broke through, slaughtering everyone inside. The message was clear. Roman rule was being torn down, stone by stone. Hearing of the uprising, the Roman 9th Legion, commanded by Petilius Ceriolus, marched to intercept Boudicca. But they underestimated the size and ferocity of her army. The Britons ambushed the legion and, in a shocking victory, annihilated almost the entire infantry. Only the commander and his cavalry managed to escape. The 9th Legion was effectively wiped out. The rebels were jubilant. They had destroyed a Roman legion, a feat few had ever accomplished. With momentum on their side, Boudicca turned her sights on the burgeoning commercial centre of London. By now, the Roman governor Suetonius Paulinus, a seasoned and ruthless general, had rushed back from a campaign in Wales. He reached London ahead of Boudicca's army, but one look at the situation told him everything. He didn't have enough men to defend the city against the massive rebel host. He made a cold, calculated decision. London was to be abandoned. He evacuated his soldiers and any citizens who could keep up, leaving the rest to their fate. What happened next was a repeat of Camulodunum, but on a grander scale. Boudicca's army descended on the defenseless city. There was no battle, only a massacre. Anyone who had remained, the old, the infirm, those who couldn't flee in time, was cut down. The city was plundered and then set ablaze. Archaeologists today can still find a thick red layer of burned debris beneath modern London, a stark testament to the fury of Boudicca's rebellion. It's called the Boudiccan Destruction Layer. It's from London. The rebel army marched on Verulamium, today's St. Albans. The story was the same. The city was destroyed, and its inhabitants were slaughtered, in 3 cities. It's estimated that between 70,000 and 80,000 Romans and pro-Roman Britons had been killed. Boudicca's rebellion had reached its zenith. She had brought the Roman province of Britannia to its knees. She had avenged her family and her people in the most brutal way imaginable. But the final confrontation was yet to come. Suetonius had been retreating, gathering his scattered forces. He managed to pull together an army of around 10,000 disciplined, battle-hardened legionaries. The Britons, confident after their string of victories, had brought their families in wagons to watch the final, glorious battle. They parked them in a crescent shape behind their lines, effectively blocking their own retreat. It was a fatal mistake. Boudica rode before her army in a chariot, her daughters beside her, delivering a final, impassioned speech. But she declared it was not a time for a noblewoman to talk of lost wealth, but to fight as an ordinary person for lost freedom. She was resolved to win or die. On the other side, Suetonius gave a calm, professional speech to his men, urging them to ignore the noise and the numbers of the barbarians and to trust in their training and their swords. The battle began. The Britons charged forward with a terrifying war cry. They rushed up the slope towards the Roman line, but the narrow terrain compressed their vast numbers, turning their greatest advantage into a liability. The Romans held their ground. First, they unleashed a volley of heavy javelins, the Pila, which tore through the British front ranks, disrupting their charge. Then, as the Britons faltered, Suetonius ordered the advance. The legions moved forward in a tight, disciplined wedge formation. The short Roman stabbing sword, the gladius, was far more effective in the crush of close-quarters combat than the long swords of the Britons. The Romans were a methodical, efficient machine of death. The rebel army, more a chaotic mob than a disciplined force, began to break. They tried to retreat, but their path was blocked by the wagons of their own families. The retreat turned into a rout, and the rout turned into a slaughter. The Romans, showing no mercy, killed not just the warriors, but the women, children, and even the pack animals. Roman sources claim 80,000 Britons died, with only 400 Roman casualties. Boudica survived the battle, but her army was gone. Her rebellion crushed, her ultimate fate is uncertain. The historian Tacitus says she took poison, choosing death over capture and the humiliation of being paraded through the streets of Rome. And so the fire of the rebellion was extinguished as quickly as it had been lit. Boudica's story is a powerful tale of resistance against impossible odds. Was she a heroic freedom fighter or a vengeful butcher? The truth, as always, is complex. She was a queen, a mother, and a warrior who, when pushed to the absolute limit, unleashed a storm of fury that almost broke Roman Britain. Her legacy endures, not just in the layer of ash beneath London, but as a timeless symbol of a people's fierce and desperate fight for freedom. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, please hit that like button and subscribe for more dives into history's most epic tales. Let me know in the comments what historical figure you'd like to see covered next. Until then, stay curious.